Welcome back everybody to a Tactical Fly Fisher video. We are on the water today on a river that is still in Snowmelt Runoff. It's past the peak, but still pretty ragey at the moment. This is a river that during the winter, it's got a base flow of about 20 to 25 CFS, and I just checked the gauge upstream and it was at about 720 or 725 CFS. So lots of water in it right now. But that doesn't mean that there's no opportunity to go and catch some fish. So in this video, we're gonna give you a few tips to help you tackle some high water or snowmelt runoff if you're out in the Western United States, where that's a big part of our hydrograph every year. And hopefully these tips will give you some ideas of how to go about fishing the next time you encounter some high water and or turbid water. The first thing I wanna make sure that I mention is just to be really careful when you're wading. When you got high water like this, it doesn't take much to have a little slip and have a near drowning or a drowning incident. We don't need that. Let's all stay safe. Make sure you know your limitations when you're wading and don't go over those limitations. It's still plenty safe to wade in a lot of places when you're out here, and I'm gonna do some of that today, but know your limitations and be safe when it comes to where you go and the type of current that you're pushing against when you're out here during high water. The next tip I want to mention is to think about the temperature of the water that you're fishing. Temperature controls so much of the trout's metabolism. They respond directly to the temperature that's around them in the amount of eating that they need to do or their consumptive demand. So on this river, we've got dozens and dozens of miles of water that we could fish. We're fishing down in the valley today because it's a pretty warm day. And we're a long ways away from where the snow is melting at 10, 11,000 plus feet in this drainage. And we're down at about 5,500 feet and many dozens of miles downstream. And so by the time it's reached here, even though the water's pretty high, it's at least had a chance to warm up into kind of the mid 50s range on a 80-degree day like we have today. So the water temperatures are just about perfect. But if we were to go up the canyon a long ways where this river comes out of, closer to that source of snow melt, there's going to be a point where the water is in the low 40s, maybe even the high 30s right up in the headwaters. And at those temperatures, the trout are just going to be a lot less active. So if you have a choice of where to go when you're confronting high water like this, think about it and try and pick a stretch of stream where the temperature is going to be closer to that optimum, somewhere in the at least 50 to 65 degree range instead of closer to the source of the snow melt that's going to be a lot colder. The next tip is just simply to find softer water. When you look at the river that's raging a lot of times behind you and you just kind of take a broad view of it, you're just going to see a lot of fast water, and that might seem intimidating at first, but if you look more closely, you'll almost always find some places along the bank or maybe even below shelves where you're going to find some soft water. And these soft places are where the trout are going to be because they want to save some energy. Now, there's going to be places in the middle of the river that are down below rocks where there will also be trout, and you simply probably won't be able to get drifts into those areas because the current's going to be raging over the top of them, and they're going to be tucked down, behind a rock that's on the bottom that's in one tiny little soft spot and just kind of riding it out. And it's going to be really hard to get drifts or presentations into those types of places. But if you can identify those areas of softer, slower water, find those places and you'll find fish that are willing to take. And they could be as small as, a dinner plate size along the bank, or they can be a big eddy like we've got here beside us in a pool that's normally really slow, but has a ripping current through the center of it right now, but just has a nice big eddy on the side as a result of that big ripping current in the center. So look for that soft water. That's where you're going to find your fish. My next tip is to think about the size of tippet that you're fishing. Normally in this stream, I fish a lot of 7X tippet, but on a day like today, where I'm going to be fishing in areas that are often dry, those areas tend to pile up a lot of sticks. And so I'm likely to hook the bottom fairly often. If I went out right now with a whole bunch of 7X tippet, I'm going to lose a lot more flies to those sticks than I might normally. Plus, if I hook a large fish, there's a lot more current for them to get into right now than there might normally be in this river, and I'm probably going to lose some of those larger fish if I just went a little bit higher. So I'm going to step it up to 6X tippet. That gives me just enough strength and that I'll be able to pull some sticks off the bottom and fight some of those larger fish. But I don't want to go too much higher in diameter because the thicker that tippet gets, the slower my sink rate's gonna be. And in this really fast, heavy water, you've gotta balance that strength with the sink rate so that you can get your flies down near where the fish are at on those nymph drifts without having to go to bomber heavy flies all of the time. When it comes to the rigs that I'm going to be fishing today, normally when I'm fishing water like this, there's very little chance, unless you have some large stone flies or something in your local streams, but there's little chance that I'm gonna see rising fish pretty much at all today. I did fish this last week. I didn't see any rising fish. The current is just too fast and there's too much water for them to have to come up through the column and fight that current in order to rise for anything right now. So it's pretty much a nymphing or a streamer affair. So I'm gonna bring 2 nymphing rods today, both rigged with micro leaders. One of them is just gonna have a single fly. I'm gonna use that rig for the smaller, tighter seams and the more turbulent current and the little pockets along the bank, anywhere where I need to maximize the accuracy of my casting. And then I've got a double nymph rig to fish the deeper, less turbulent water that might be in the middle of the river, places like the edge of this eddy that I'm staring at right here that I'll probably fish in just a minute. So having that versatility between the single and the 2-fly rig to go back and forth right away, that helps me to be more efficient when I'm out on the river. You could obviously just use 1 rod and then clip off that upper tag if you want to fish a single fly, and then add a fly back to that dropper tag if you want to go to 2 flies. Today I'm probably going to be switching so much, I'm just going to bring 2 rods and simplify the process. One other thing that you want to think about when it comes to fishing high water, a lot of times the fish aren't going to get a very long look at your flies, and the water isn't very turbid today. We're past the peak part of runoff when it's at its most muddy or off color. But even at that much visibility, you still want to give the fish the maximum chance to see your flies. So if you're in high water or off color water, use flies that are easily visible. Things like junk flies, so like pink worms or mops that are bright cream or chartreuse, or some of the flies that I fish a lot are tag nymphs. So like a blowtorch that has a dark body and a fluorescent tag. Flies like those will either have a lot of fluorescence in some of those bright pink materials that help them be seen underwater from that sun fluorescing off of them, or you get that dark silhouette of the dark body of that blowtorch against that fluorescent butt, and that contrast really helps fish pick them up in the drift. So if you're out there wondering what fly to tie on, don't pick the smallest flies in your box during water like this. A lot of times I fish more like 16s and larger, whereas the rest of the year I'm often fishing 16s and smaller. So pick a larger fly. Don't be afraid to go a little bit bigger on the bead because of the heavy water, and pick a fly that's easily seen that you've got in your box. Streamers are obviously a really good option too, and jig streamers, especially ones with a fluorescent bead, are often patterns that I tend to turn to when the water's like this. The last tip I want to give you here is just a little bit of a tip on landing fish in high water. So a lot of times in previous videos that I've done, I've talked a lot about setting the hook downstream, then gradually moving the rod up and over to, and then keeping a low rod angle, and moving that fish upstream of me so that then I can use the current to help me net the fish. But a lot of times when you're fishing really high water like this, the current in the center of the channel is so fast that if I go through that same movement, I will almost never get that fish back upstream ahead of me. So I look for that same soft water that I might be fishing to find fish, and I look for those areas along the bank that are a little bit slower. And a lot of times when I'm hooking and landing fish in high water, I'll set the hook and just keep the rod in a downstream angle and bring that fish towards the bank just downstream of me. And there's usually a little bit of a soft spot somewhere that I can move the fish into, and then just walk towards it and bend down and net it. So reverse your rod angles if you're really dealing with fast water in the center, and don't be afraid to land those fish downstream of you. If you have some soft water, you can get them into along the bank. So let's go out and fish, see what we can do. Okay, I'm gonna start by walking my way out on this shallow shelf. And it might look really fast here, but if you look closely, the rocks that I'm standing on are very light colored. It's because they were dry right before runoff started. And they make a nice shelf where there's just a little seam out in the center here that's nice and slow. It doesn't look like a spot that would hold many fish, but there might be a rainbow or two tucked up on the slow side. There's one. Yep. Okay, so I'm gonna do what I talked about earlier. I do have a little bit of slow water over here. I have raging water out there in the center, so I'm not gonna try and get that fish upstream of me. Pretty decent rainbow. Whoa, well, it now wants to go upstream of me and back out into the current. There we go. Not a bad rainbow. Okay, that was a quick first cast reaction. I'm gonna go back in there, and basically what's happening here is I have this shelf that's diagonal that goes up the bank, comes down from some braided channels above, and there's just this little thing in the center that is a little bit slower than the surrounding water, kind of ripping water on both sides, but a center seam of current that's quite a bit slower. Oof, I don't know if that was a fish or if it was bottom, but big reaction on the cider. Same with that. I have right now a single fly rig on with a 3.3 millimeter bead blowtorch. There's another fish, little guy. We'll just hurry and get him unhooked. Oh, there, flies out. See you later. But I got about 4 feet of tippet below a Sakura marker cider. That's more than I probably need in this spot, but I'm gonna need that for some water upstream, so I'm just kind of adjusting a little bit and keeping that cider up off the water and not allowing my rig to get tuck cast or anything at all in here so that I don't get extra sink time, because I am ticking bottom, especially near the head of that shelf, pretty easily until it has a chance to get over that and into the softer water below. But this is the spot I'm not expecting more than about 1 or 2 fish, so I've already got 2. I'll make just 1 or 2 more casts and then we'll move on, because it's only a narrow little area that has slow enough water the fish might be holding. Maybe a seam that's about 1 foot wide, and the water on both sides is ripping pretty fast. That's it for that. I'm now gonna walk up along this shelf. It stays shallow the whole way, so I am safe. I am in the middle of a bunch of fast water, but it's really quite shallow. So I'm gonna walk up the shelf until I'm in the next bit of water, and then there's slow water on the edges of some different channels and braids of water that are coming in. So let's go wade upstream and we'll hit that. Okay, I've now come around the corner of this tree that was right near where I was fishing and moved upstream. I'm standing a little closer than I want to my target lie here. I would normally want to be a little bit further away from this or than this. There's a little guy. But if I back up anymore in my position here, I'm right into the raging current that's behind me. So I'm essentially standing where I just caught those last 2 fish. And that was my only spot where I had calm enough current to be able to wade. Thanks, little guy. So at least I didn't spook that fish. Hopefully I didn't spook some larger ones in here as well. But I've got soft water along the edge of this fast ripper current that's coming down from the area above. There's another fish. Woo! There we go. Oh, this one's got great color. Not a very large rainbow, but a very beautiful one. Awesome par marks on it. Well, I'm just gonna keep running this well. I've got a single fly on, still have that same rig, 3.3 millimeter bead, blowtorch. I actually tied this fly for the Czech Republic in the World Championships that we just came out of, and there's another fish. It's actually got a jet black body instead of the peacock, just to be completely dark silhouette to show up in some tannin stained water when we were there. And here during runoff, we have kind of some fairly tannin stained water here as well. I think I've found the rainbow trout nursery. It's really turbulent current here, which is another reason to be fishing that single fly, because if I was fishing 2 flies right here, they'd likely land in separate pieces of current where it's churning and boiling all over the place. They'd get tossed around and they'd be fighting each other in the drift. So having that single fly right here is a better option, just to try and maintain a better drift and have only one fly in those complex currents. Okay, I'm gonna make 1 or 2 more casts into that water ahead of me here. I went a little bit further up on that one into some shallower water and I ticked bottom. Okay, I'm gonna step up now and move just a little further up. There's some more soft water coming off of this shelf over the top. Okay, we were gonna set up on some different water down below after that last spot I fished, but we couldn't get a little window through the trees for Justin to get the camera set up. So we've come just a little bit further upstream. I've got a soft bank here. There's a fish. Brown trout this time. I'm getting him into that slow water right ahead of me. And there we go. So in this spot, we just have a churning eddy on the bank, basically. We've got ripping current right through the center of the river. But there's a set of boulders just upstream in my position on the far bank that is creating, or it's kind of shunting that flow into the center and creating a little bit of a void behind it that the eddy fills. So that slower eddy water right there is just enough of a break from the current that there's obviously at least 1 fish in it. Hopefully some more. There's another little guy. Holy cow. I have found the nursery today. Okay, with this soft water right on the bank here, I'm just fishing that single fly through it. It's really turbulent again. It's not a great place for 2 flies. I just missed another fish. Had some lightning in the distance there too, so we'll have to keep our eye on that. But I'm fishing over the top of this faster water and into that slower water on the far bank, and trying to put drifts through less turbulent parts of it. Oh goodness, that's a little bigger fish. Okay, it's gotten downstream of me, so I'm gonna actually force it to the bank with the downstream rod angle here. Get it into that dead water. There we go. Boy, that brown trout's got some color. That's a lovely fish. Okay, let's see if we can get just a couple more here. But as I was saying before, I'm casting over the top of that fastest current and then tracing kind of the edge of the middle of the eddy, or I guess the center of the eddy there, not the edge, but in the center of that eddy, it's water that's kind of going, it's having a hard time deciding whether it needs to join the main flow and go downstream or merge with the rest of the eddy that's going back upstream. Oh, that was a little fish. But if I cast all the way to the far part of the eddy here that's recircling back upstream, that water's really shallow. It's only maybe 6 to 8 inches deep, right on the bank. I don't really expect any fish to be holding in that shallow of a depth right now. So I'm mainly just working the center of that eddy instead. And I'll try a couple of drifts that are just a little bit deeper, kind of, there we go, yep. I tuck casted that one and let the sider stay a little more vertical instead of following it with the rod tip. And nice little rainbow. It's always important when you've made some drifts through an area and you're catching fish, but then all of a sudden the catching stops. Experiment a little bit with your drifts. Try some different drift angles, some different entries with the fly. Like I made that little tuck cast to get it to drop vertically in and drive straight down right away, and then just kind of held the rod tip there and didn't follow it, and it dropped right in on that fish and it took right away. Thanks for checking out the video, everybody. I hope you enjoyed it. The fishing honestly wasn't quite as good as I thought it might be, and I certainly didn't have many larger fish come out to play. It's kind of funny because I'd fished the same river in a slightly different stretch, just barely upstream, about a week before, and it was really good. So I was excited to get out there and do a little fishing for this video, but that's the way sometimes fishing goes. Anyway, I still hope it gave you some ideas to maybe target high water in your neck of the woods a little bit better. Whether you have a strong snowmelt part of the hydrograph like we do in the West, or whether you're just dealing with some rain somewhere else, wherever you fish, hopefully you won't be quite as scared the next time you encounter some high water. You'll have an idea of what flies to put on, what water to look for, and have some strategies to go out there and help you catch some fish. If you did like the video, please give us that thumbs up on YouTube and subscribe to our channel. But most importantly, come on over to tacticalflyfisher.com, where we've got whatever fly tying or fishing gear that you need for your next trip on the water. And be on the lookout. We'll be back in another week or two with another video. We're about to go film a day of stillwater fishing this Friday, so I'll have another video for you just around the corner. Thanks again. See you in the next one.